Okay, so this is it. Okay, I'm going to try to talk quickly. Um, we are spiritual beings in a physical body. Human beings' thought creates reality. Everything you see around you is created by human thinking. This is direct. This is a reality. This is not fantasy. This is the real world. The fake world is the world where we don't know this, where we think that what is tangible around us was already there and we build it with our hands. We do that too. This is because we live in a dual world. The fake world and the real world. The real world is the world where we create reality with our thinking. That's the real world. That's what we would call a fantasy world. The fake world is the world around us that is created by technical beings. When I say being or beings, I mean that, you could have like a leader, for instance, right? And the rest are all subordinates that go in a hierarchy down, that type of thing. These are beings that have been here for a long time. They're beings that control this whole reality, this false reality, because we're really creating it, but we don't know it. Human beings are spiritual beings in a physical body. Our thought creates reality, and we are all connected to other human beings. This knowledge is kept from us. We don't know it, and we can't operate it properly because of this, because we're all operating in the false world. So our connection to one another, our thought creating reality, is completely brought down to nothing. And instead, technology, which is what controls this planet and what the beings that control this planet use, we are using that instead. So that means we are not operating anywhere near at full potential, shall we say. But also we're just not aware. So look, it's like this. We live in a dual world, right? The world that we think is real is really the fantasy world, and the world that we would think is a fantasy world is really real. In other words, it's like this, right? And this is also part of it. Every time you turn your TV on, every time you look at a computer, every time you watch a movie, every time you watch a video, anytime you watch anything that is technological, you assume that that is artificial, and it is. But even the artificial in this world, because it's a dual world and a reverse world, I must emphasize this too, a reverse world. Everything is in reverse. Everything is the opposite to what it appears to be. So this is a real problem, because when you look at something and you believe it to be true, as I have most of my life, you have to then say, no, I have to put it in reverse, because this is a reverse world. So everything that I think is the truth is not, and everything that I think is fantasy is really the real world. The real world. It's two worlds. It's a bit like, even in this world right now, like I say, you watch a movie and you assume that is fantasy. It's part of your technology, part of your reality. It's all technical. It's all fantasy. There's no difference. It's all merged. We have been led to believe that there's a separation, that when we watch a movie, it is different to our reality that we look out the window. In reality, that world is just as real as when we look out the window, because it's going on. But we do not see it, because we are kept in this small world that is based on the reality I see when I look out my window. I do not see the invisible other world that is there, that is the world of what we would call the future. But it's not the future, it's actually happening right now. It's on your movies and things. Every bizarre thing you see on a movie is happening now. It's just that it's not happening outside your window. You can't see it, but it is. This is the deception of the world. And our thought is creating reality as well, and we're all connected, but we don't know it. So you can imagine this world, as I've said before, it is like an insane asylum in a way, because we're all operating under total delusion. And that's why there's so much chaos, because none of us really know what's going on. We're meant to be waking up at this time and seeing it. Humans are meant to be. But it doesn't seem to be happening, because the technological world is also operating against that. So we have this duality going on there too. It's very complicated. Once you start to see it, then it fits, and it is not quite as complicated. But you will also need to look at what I would recommend. Our history is also, there's two histories, as I've said before, the real history and the fake history. The real history that we think is the real history is the fake history, everything in reverse, a dual world. The alternate history that we would think is fantasy, of the ancient gods and all the civilizations that have come and gone, that is the real history. So, as you can see, it's complicated. Now, I hope I'm putting these videos across clearly. I know I'm not, because it is a vast subject. You really do need to look at the alternative history. Forget about the history you have, but just give a look at the other one and look at it over and over again and see if it doesn't somehow fit and could not fit with this reality that we are now living. It does actually fit much more perfectly than the false history that we have, because there is the missing link, and there's lots of pieces missing from our history anyway, because if you're going to create a fake history, it's very hard to do that, because humans are quite intelligent. In fact, like I say, they're not only intelligent, but they create everything. But instead, they are controlled by the fake reality. So they're now becoming very limited, whereas they should have, been at a much higher level by now. This has all happened because of technological intervention. And when I say technological intervention, I mean we have that now, obviously. Like, we have that now with technology, and we're aware of it because we are using technology. But there was intervention by technological gods, you could say, a long, long time ago. And when I say gods, I mean that they appeared to be gods to us. Because, see, this is how intervention, I think, worked. Human beings who are spiritual beings and create reality with their thinking. So they are creative beings. They create. They are the creators. Technology does not create. Technology merely manipulates what is already created, because technology cannot think. And technology cannot creatively think, okay? This is hard to get your head around. Technology can only manipulate and use what is there. Human beings are creative, thinking beings. They think, they create, and it becomes a tangible physical reality. Human thought creates physical reality. This is a very hard concept, because I can't prove it to you right now by saying, hey, look in my hand, I'm going to, like a magician, create something. I actually should be able to, but I can't, because I'm not connected, because my power is limited, because I'm not connected enough to all the other human beings. Like I say, and also it's not going to be instantaneous. It cannot manifest like a magician straight here. Magicians can sometimes do this. They're like, what you would call a fake magician, where they're doing stuff with their hands to pretend to create that. Sometimes that actually is not that, I think. They're actually using their spiritual power, they've been given it by the dark forces, shall we say, because the technology is the dark. That's like your dark prince or your dark god, right? And human beings are the light beings who create. But they've been overtaken by the dark beings and overtaken by the technology. So a lot of the human beings are now dark. But in becoming dark, they lose their power, and they limit the power of the other beings too, because we're all connected, you see. So it's a bit of a dilemma. But at any rate, but they're given then sometimes power by the dark beings, technological power, because technology can mimic and can utilise the creative power of the creator beings. I know I'm laughing because it's a bit mind-blowing, and it's a little bit hard to grasp, even for me, because I've only come into it in this late time in my life to actually realise this. To sometimes see what you've been thinking manifest a few days later or something. You put that down, as I've said before, to coincidence. You don't think that you've had any connection to it. But in reality, this is the real world. Humans are creating reality with their thinking, but it's manipulated by the technology dark forces, the technological gods. The technological gods come to the earth. Let's just go back to the Garden of Eden, because that history actually fits what happened. Even though our idea of the Garden of Eden is so fantastic and so spiritual in the sense that it's like associated with religion and stuff, which it's really nothing to do with religion. It's just an historical fact. Human beings were created, and they were meant to develop naturally and develop all their powers. They should have had many, many, many superpowers, and they were creator beings, right? There was intervention. Technological beings came from another system, shall we say. Other planet, you could say. We all know there's universes out there and there's planets and all this, so it's not unreasonable, okay? This is what we call the missing link, where the history doesn't quite fit, where something changed, where humans all of a sudden evolved into what they are now. I say we did not evolve, we devolved, because the technological gods that came... See, when the gods came, right, and when I say gods, they were not gods really, but they were technological beings. They were very, very advanced. Much more advanced technologically than the humans were spiritually. Humans were just starting out, you see. The spiritual being, if it evolves to its full potential, will be more advanced, much more advanced than the technological being. But they did not get to that point, because the technological beings arrived and they come here, and figure it out yourself. If you see a spacecraft coming and these technological beings that can show you magic, technological magic, and the human beings are not fully aware that they're fully creator beings. They haven't developed all their abilities yet. But also, they probably just were fascinated by these beings, and these beings pretended to be gods, and they were very advanced. So in a kind of way, it was reasonable for the innocent, underdeveloped, young human beings to see these kind of technological beings that looked so impressive and that were so unusual and different to them and could show magic in a technological way. It was reasonable for them to bow down and think that they had created them and that they were the gods. And this is what happened. And this is like the Garden of Eden, where the serpent, the technological being, seduces Eve, shall we say, into saying, look, I can give you more than what you have. I can show you the good, the knowledge, the tree of good and evil, the tree of life, and all this sort of stuff, right? Knowledge. But in giving them that knowledge and changing them, they took from them the true knowledge that they were really the creator beings. So in a way, the intervention gave them what they appeared to be knowledge and changed them from their innocence, where they should have been creating a good world, a peaceful world, because they were already in a world that had everything they needed. You see, they had food, they had light, they had water, they had everything provided for them. All they had to do was just enjoy it and create. Instead, they went down the path of good and evil, tree of so-called knowledge, which meant that they would also see evil and destruction. So you tell me, did they make the right choice? They threw away their own knowledge of what they were meant to be and how they were meant to develop, and they went into a world of good and evil. Yes, the duality world that I've spoke about that we live in now, which means that you, instead of seeing everything as good and just creating like humans are meant to do, we can also destroy. But we don't know we're even doing this because we don't even have this knowledge. So as you can see, yes, there was deception. And they said that. And this was, and if you want to take it from a biblical point of view, yes, the fall of man. Because man was meant to evolve and go high. Instead, he has devolved and fell and is still falling and is now at a very low level. This is the history. This is the true history, okay? And the technological beings that took over then and were acknowledged as God, and they rule this world, because that's like, it's a bit like what happens in our world. You can invade another country and you take over and then it becomes your country. This is the same thing. It's like the God came, technological God came, he took over, and humans at the original time had the choice. They've always had a choice. This is the thing. They chose to go with the technological God. They chose to leave the Garden of Eden, their paradise, their creative world where they had full power and full control to create, and was seduced into thinking that they would learn more and have more if they went with the serpent, you see, the technological God. Whereas in reality, if you think about it, how could they have more when they already had everything? That's why even the Bible says that God told them, if you eat of the tree of good and evil and you go with the serpent, you will surely die. Because, in other words, you will not progress. You will go down. You will die. Eventually you might even die. A totally extinction even. That's what I believe is the message. And this is not a religious message, because I'm saying this is the true history of humanity. It's not it's even though we are spiritual beings, and it is a spiritual, everything really is spiritual, because the reality we see around us is a technologically false reality. Because if humans really create with their thinking and they're spiritual beings and they're all connected, you can see that is the real reality. We're really doing that. You see what I'm saying? So it's complicated and it is hard to get your head round. But I'm just putting that out there. I hope I put something out there where you can perhaps get it. I would recommend highly that you look at an alternative history just to get an idea of how little we know, and of how there have been civilizations in the past that have, like us now, have evolved technically to a high level and then fell and been destroyed. And it's surprising that there are still some of us here, but that's another issue. That's because, like I say, we are spiritual beings who come here in a physical body. We create reality with our thinking and we're all connected. But that's the thing, we're really meant to go on and on. We are not limited. We were created almost with a limitlessness, right? The technological God, technology is limited. Spirituality, spiritual beings are limitless. Spiritual beings are eternal. Technology is limited and finite and not infinite. It is it only has a certain span. It's not eternal. It doesn't go on forever. But advanced technological beings like the ones that control Earth and this whole insane asylum, I say insane asylum because it's so muddled up. It's not operating like the Earth was originally meant to, but that is because of the intervention and because of everything that has happened. Take it from a biblical point of view, because that's right, because you see, the history has to be shown to people, and it is shown. That's another thing. Because we are spiritual beings and we were created and meant to actually create consciously and unconsciously in this planet. That's another thing, as I've said before. There's the conscious and the unconscious mind. When we got involved with the technological gods, they closed down the unconscious part of our mind, which is a big part of the creating, to where we know what we're creating. See, now we're creating subconsciously, so we actually don't know that we're creating negatively as well, you see. So it's complicated. But the real history, the alternative history, is there, but it's not the history also is, the real history has to be shown as well. In other words, the Bible shows a real history, okay? It shows a real history, even though I myself always looked upon most of the fantastic things that happened in the Bible as fantasy. But that's like looking at the science fiction movies. We think that is the future. Well, it is the future. The only thing is the future is now. It's actually now. But that's the duality world. That's behind the scenes. That's like behind the curtain, like in The Wizard of Oz or whatever. We look out our window and we see a very simple world. That is not the world of the technological God. The technological God was in contact with human beings when there was the intervention, when they arrived from space, you could say. But that was a long, long time ago. Since then, civilizations have fell and we now are not directly in contact. We worship that God and follow his directions through, you could say like secondary, because we're still following it. We're still in the dark and we're still going along with all the technology, and we're got the same system going. We're not living like we were meant to live in the Garden of Eden. We're still doing we're still following this. It's a system, a technological system that is created around us. So we are following the God still, even though we are now not in direct contact, so we don't actually see the being or the beings that operate for this entity, shall we say. But we're still, and this probably is because we might not accept it now. I do not know. I don't know how humans would react because it's not happening, you know. We have our religions and things which are our gods, but they are not really the reality of what's going on at all. They are merely used to keep us more into a false history and more into and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Jesus Christ did not exist and that he was not a highly evolved spiritual being, you see. In fact, I think that is my view, that was what he was here for, and that he was trying to show humans the truth and show them that they were meant to take control of their reality and not operate so much in the false technological world. I think that's what he was doing back all those years ago. And, but anyway, I won't go there. So I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that the religions themselves were definitely not set up by Jesus Christ. Well, we know that anyway, so that's not me saying anything wrong. Jesus Christ never went into a church. Jesus Christ never talked about setting up a religion in his name or any of that sort of stuff. He was merely preaching to individual human beings, knowing what I'm telling you now, that, you see, the thing is, look at it this way, right? Jesus Christ, when he was around, and this come to me the other day, he was a big threat to the Roman Empire. That's why they got rid of him. Now, how could one man be a threat to the whole of the Roman Empire that controlled everything? All he did was walk around as a fisherman talking with his disciples to a few groups of people. He didn't have the amounts of people that even your pop stars would have at a pop concert. So how could he have had an influence? Why was he a threat? Why did he nearly overthrow the entire Roman Empire? Because I believe this is what was going to happen. How could one man do that? Impossible, you say. Well, no, not, because he knew that human beings are spiritual beings. Their thought creates reality, and they're all connected. So he knew that he only had to speak to a few to get the whole lot to realise the truth. And he knew that they, as human beings, particularly back then because they were not ruled as much by technology, they had a clear mind that if they saw the truth, they would know it was the truth and they would unite. And their thought, even though they were not connected at that time, they did not know this like we still don't now. Because they were free-minded, their thoughts would have passed on to other human beings. So in other words, Jesus did not have to speak to 1 million people. He only had to speak to a few. He knew this. And that would be mentally passed on to the others, and they would have a choice. And back then, they were smarter than we are now because they were starting to recognise the truth. Now, we should be smarter, but we're not, because instead we're more technologically controlled. So therefore our mind is not available to pick up the information or the truth from another human being. In fact, we have to do it like I'm doing here now with this, and I don't get any views. So, so it's like that. Now, that's all I'm saying, is that was what he must have known, because there's no way that one man could overthrow the entire Roman Empire. Figure that out yourself. I mean, we talk about that and we have that in our religion, but you'd have to think from a practical point of view, it could not have happened. And of course, but the Romans knew that because they're connected more. The ones at the top are more connected to the technological beings. They know, but also the technological beings use the kings, the emperors, anyone who controls humanity, whether it be then or now, they are used by the technological beings to then get rid of a Jesus or someone like that might be a potential threat to their civilization, to their setup, to their system. They don't want everyone being a Jesus Christ, knowing their full potential and evolving to where they don't need the technological God, you see, because the technological God is only needed while you are living in a limited way. The technological God is very advanced and almost genius in that ability, but still has to manipulate the creative ability of the human, because they are not creator beings, you see. They lost that. They gave that over for the technology. Once you give over your spirituality, your creative ability, your emotions, your feelings, your thought over to technology, then you limit your potential. And even the technological beings, they did that a long time ago, but they advanced their technology to a vast extent, which means they can manipulate the humans. It's a bit complicated. It's hard to explain, and even I find it hard to get my head around it. But this is essentially, because I do not have contact with the technological God, so I do not know how advanced. I know it's very advanced, and it can do much. It can, extend life in a technological way, but it doesn't give eternal life. Humans already had eternal life at the beginning. They threw that over to go with the technology. You see what I'm trying to say is that it appeared to be a good exchange, but if you really think about it, it was a very poor exchange, in my opinion. Because if you already have the potential to have everything, why would you go for something that appears to be superior, but actually is less? It's only that you haven't developed yours, whereas they have developed their less technology to a higher level. It's all about a level. You see what I'm saying? In other words, humans, if they had developed to a high spiritual level, the same level maybe as the technological beings, because they have advanced very high technologically. It's a bit like saying the technological being can never advance to the highest spiritual level. But they can advance very far, and they can impress humans who are in the dark and who are limited that the technology is superior to the spirituality. Because if you don't know how far the spirituality is meant to go and that it really creates everything, of course you're going to think that the technology is the superior thing. And this is where the humans got seduced at the what I would call the missing link level. But there again, you'd have to look into the history. But there is the missing link, we all know that. The missing link has not been accounted for by science and can't be accounted for because it's not a missing link of evolution, it is an intervention. It is the serpent in the Garden of Eden. It is the technological beings coming from space. It is a turnaround of humans into something else. Now, you could also say that it's quite likely that at this time there is genetic manipulation. Technical genetic manipulation, which is what we do now too. Everyone should only be breeding naturally because technical intervention works, but it is less, you see. So that's another thing. That's just this is based on the history, so it's not based on my view personally. It's only based on the history that I'm given and that I see. So what I'm saying is that things can work and can appear to be very good, but they are still lessening the end product because of what I've said before, that if human beings are spiritual beings in a physical body, their thought creates reality and they're all connected. Anything technical has to lessen that. It may be good, it may appear to be good, but it is making the human being more technical and less spiritual. And as I said before, this has been going on for a long time. It keeps happening over and over again. Humans at this time are meant to see this and realise it. Now, I'm sorry about the noise and stuff. That's all part of the technological intervention because this is a control system and it is not our system. We are spiritual beings plonked into now an artificial system that is controlled by technology, 100%. The technology does not work with us or for us, it works against us, but instead we are using it and thinking that it is our future and our advancement. This has happened down through our history, but that history is not known to us. That is what you would call the fantasy history. Your real history is the fake history. This is what I'm saying. It's a duality world. Everything is reversed. It is ruled by the technological being, God, whatever, that controls this reality now. It's always controlled it since intervention, and that's an awful long time. But we do not, and we're not aware of it at all now, whereas at one point we were aware of it, but we also still went for it. Gotta go.